you deviate from the prescribed roles. So that makes it very difficult for men who are willing to participate in these activities, even to take care of the children, because of what the society will come up with, the names, the labels, and the direct abuses. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peace. And I rarely hear someone say, you men in literature, you men in political science, but for gender, they will always start with women. And now you know where it is coming from. And exactly what Peace has said is some of the norms our project is seeking and is trying to shift and change. We're now going to hear from Florence Muhanguzi, drawing from the Promises to Action project, where we are endeavoring to shift these persistent norms about unpaid care work. She will draw from the studies we have done so far, the formative study, but also the baseline, and at this level we are at the interventions, and we'll be sharing at the end exactly what is coming up. So Prof. Florence, please, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Bantebia. Thank you, our distinguished participants, for coming to listen to us. You know, when you talk about unpaid care work, it is a cultural. It is cultural, and usually needs to be contextualized. But when you listen to what Dr. Musimenta has said and what we are finding out, our findings seem to be quite similar, meaning that in Uganda, most of these beliefs and perceptions around women's identity, men's identity, relating to unpaid care work and work within the home seem to be the same. And so most of what Dr. Musimenta has spoken about is not very different from what we are seeing from the other districts that we went to. We went to 4 districts, that is Masindi, Mbarara, Mpigi, and Palisa. But the narratives from the men and women and the youth seem to be speaking to the same beliefs and perceptions around what unpaid care work is in terms of women and men. We find that unpaid care work is inherently a gendered phenomenon, where in most cases the majority of the uncompensated, unrecognized, undervalued work is carried out by women and men. And this is a global experience when you read about this concept of unpaid care work. And in most parts of Uganda, especially the rural areas, the distribution is severe. As Dr. Musimenta has said, women cook during the day, but they have to cook during the night, the kind of cooking they have to perform. We were talking with the men, and the men were saying they actually also accepted that women are overworked, and most of them, they said they have to work 24 hours. So the distribution remains unequal, and particularly where there are no quality and accessible services that would help to relieve the women of some of the work. And so the women and the girls shoulder the burden of unpaid care work, where the working age women are not available, are out to work like us when we are around, and now it is during the holidays. Households often turn to children, particularly girls, to fill up that role. Distribution of work in the households and in the wider community and the workplace. And within the general reproductive gender roles, women as child bearers are primarily responsible for the caregiving, which Dr. Musimenta talked about, the cooking, the cleaning, all that, you know, rotates around caring within the home is given to the women, collecting firewood and others, which, you know, creates a heavy burden on the work. And what is making this much more, you know, difficult is that these care responsibilities, a caregiver, a woman should not fall sick because, you know, you are the strength of the family. A woman does not discuss what matters in the home. She's responsible for child upbringing. A bad child leads to ridicule, you know, of the mother. Usually, when a child is indisciplined, that indiscipline goes back to the mother. Supposed to keep the home tidy, and supposed to cook and all that you know, you have had. Supposed to make sure the household is food secure. And all these descriptions relate to a woman's identity as a mother and as a caregiver, a nurturer, and all those that come with feminine roles. And most often, the descriptions and the norms emphasize women's role. The women are credited for adhering to those expectations, which are normally stated in a binary, don't do the other. If you do not conform to what you know you are prescribed to be as an ideal woman, then being a woman no longer suits you, and there are sanctions, which some of which we've already heard from too. It is generally believed, and this cuts across the whole of Uganda, that marriage would fail if a girl or a young woman is getting married and does not know how to do some of those domestic roles, peeling matoke, you know, cleaning tidying up home and all that. They are under pressure to ensure that their girls and young women get to know how to do that unpaid care work. Unlike on the part of the boys, they are not pressured at all, you know, to train their boys to do what it takes to be in a marital relationship. And note that here, if they are talking about parents, usually reference goes to the mothers. The mothers have to ensure that their girls are trained, are well prepared to be ideal women, to be those women that are fit to be in a marriage. And so you find that these beliefs in most cases favor men, and instead, you know, the burden goes to the women. And those norms and expectations for the men are framed around ensuring that the men also remain ideal men. So the identity question on unpaid care work does not only relate to the woman, but it also relates to the man. And for the man, usually the norms are laced with power and position in the home as a head, as a household head. We're supposed to, you know, take control, not engage in, of course there are sanctions if the men do not adhere. Sanctions relating to stigma, social exclusion, negative labeling, loss of respect, and all that. And so these sanctions actually stand in the way of changing these norms. And if there are any interventions to happen, the interventions should, you know, look at how these sanctions can really be, can change. the evoking of the Bible is often, rather is common, that, you know, we men were created as household heads, and so should not engage in any.
But they first see a woman before they see a professor. And I remember in the field, they say, but you professor, but you Grace now, professor, you have another identity, even if they don't call you a woman. But look, they still first say women. And you heard what Peace said. Those women in women's studies, not those women, not those professors in women's studies. So shifting becomes very complex. But in our project, we are very hopeful. We are unpacking the essence of unpaid care in defining men and women. The intervention of engaging men, in the very first days, the men went home and tried out to help their wives. Some of their wives rioted. They almost lost their marriages. But thank God we had other interventions that support those kinds of changes and shift, because they can't be rapid. There are reference groups. And so we are building communities to provide an alternative that it is okay to do certain work. And the activists go around in the communities showing different versions and engaging, allowing people to discuss. But in the past, women never used to pay fees. Now they are paying. And that is the one who was defining men. But now it has shifted. Many women are paying that. So communities are engaging. And honestly, we are very hopeful that in these communities where we are working, we are going to have a change. But also, as you discuss and question, the issue of panic is actually false. Men still occupy the biggest number of positions. Even when you analyze, even in the university, I know these days they say more women are graduating. But you must look, you know, beyond the iceberg and say, who exactly, where are they graduating, in which area? And you're going to find that the majority are in the humanities and social sciences. Engineering, medical, and so on, they are still a preserve of a certain group of people. So there shouldn't be any panic. And actually yesterday in our discussions, that this backlash is based on false assumptions. They see a few women in women's studies, and I think Makerere now is full of women. So they see in one class of Buganda Road more girls and so on. Of course, there are some statistics, girls are coming up because of the interventions. And we are also very cautious of what is going on in the men's side. But I think it is a point for us to change. And for us women, we are about to start the Nyangire movement, because the falsehood that women have made, the first identity. And here I'm sure there is a question, where are the men? We have men on this project. Unfortunately, one of them, the same panel, is in another panel, and others are all, right now we have a field exercise, but still someone will ask, why, how come you're only women talking about unpaid care work? Please don't ask that one. There are very many on this project, very many men on this project, but we really want to get your questions, and they will help us further to understand this project, but also to engage with this subject that prayer has been ignored, is not.
Thank you, sir, for reaction, and I'm impressed that this dialogue is continuing. I'd like to ask the two presenters, but I'm more familiar with this. Unfortunately, Florence, yes. Care work to be remunerated, or would you like it to be shared? Would you like men to pay house girls, or do you want them to participate in this work? Secondly, there are some privileges that women enjoy in the current social system. It is assumed that it's the man's duty to protect the woman. If something frightening happens outside at night, the one expected to open the door and check on things is the man. Now, would you like this to change as well so that the woman can also go outside and confront the problem? Or do you want no change in that area? Peace has talked about working at night and working during the day. What changes would you like to see in this area? Would you like us to stop working at night or stop working in the day? In other words, what exactly do you want to see happening? What do we want to see change, and at what pace? Thank you.
Thank you so much, our presenters, for this very interesting area, care work. I was so impressed about the fact that you engaged the men and the women about who is an ideal woman and an ideal man. In their interactions, did that ideal man recognize or even appreciate that the women are overworked? Did we find any ideal men who were willing and doing something to reduce the burden that the women were already carrying? Because that is a step towards the right direction. And my second question is similar to what Professor Abbas Chimba has given us. As a project, what strategies are you hoping to have in place to aid the transition from a situation where we see the women overburdened by care work to a situation where we'll see more sharing of the workload that is in the homes? Because this work benefits all of us. And therefore, if it is for our benefit, it is just normal that we accept to share it. So as a project, how are you going to encourage and motivate the ideal and unideal men to accept to share in the care work? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My question goes to Dr. Peace. I do not mean to discredit the Bible, but the Bible was written, I think, 2,000 years ago, and I also believe that cultures can change. And if we are to depend on the policies that were written in the past, the world is changing, and it is up to us to move with the change and to see how we can live within this change to build peaceful families. And it is very hard to, for example, engage men who are...
Fred from the School of Women and Gender Studies. Did you call it problematic? Yet, for me, I see it as not being problematic because this unpaid care work is responsible for most people, especially men, for their psychosocial stability at workplaces and their welfare. Because, for example, if I leave home and maybe there is a problem, there is no one, I'm not going to be stable here. I'll be somehow unstable. I'm wondering what's happening, who is taking care of this and this. So my question is, why did you call it problematic? Or maybe I misunderstood what you meant by problematic. Thank you.
Good morning to you. I'm Kakande Crispas from School of Law. I have a comment and one question. The question is, what really is the project about? Is it achieving an equal balance in the unpaid work or reducing on the percentage? Another thing is, the comment is, you talk about the unpaid care work. Have you gone through the legal implications where the women, some of the women emancipation projects like FIDA Uganda were fighting for the matrimonial property distribution law, in that the unpaid care work is attributed to the overall general gains of a family? In other words, what the women do that we call unpaid for is actually a contribution to the wealth, to the gains of a family. And when things like divorce arise, that is put into calculations. Lest we forget that we are putting the bar high by fighting nature.
Thank you. My name is Basemira Nesta. I'm a PhD scholar from School of Gender. Thank you. My name is Basemira Nesta. I'm a PhD scholar from School of Women and Gender Studies. I want to thank you. You have been a great panel, and the discussion has been quite enriching. Now, Professor, you talked about panic, and in your own understanding, I would like you to help us understand that in verge of, as we come up to solve some of these problems, care work and the challenges that it comes with, are we solving a problem or we are creating more problems than we're actually trying to address? I also want to share what in my culture I see. In my culture of Toro, there's a belief that men who go to the kitchen are called empotozuburo, minglers, millet minglers. And this affects them in decision making, that a man who is considered to be a millet mingler cannot be listened to in a village, do socioeconomic activities, I must say. So how are we going to address some of these challenges that come with the issues as we run away from a shift in gender roles? We are another problem. I don't that some of one, and it comes with Professor Bantebe is trying to talk about. I know of men. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, the three discussants. Joseph Mugara, a master's student of clinical psychology here. My focus is on interpretation, contextualizing findings. Something to do with contextualizing. I think that's very important. A student is doing a study on the mental health of caregivers in informal and formal settings, caregivers of TB patients. I have helped that colleague relate on that literature work is proportionately provided by females. So I concur with the findings of your study or studies. But for Uganda, I think the contextual interpretation of the findings is really important. And I'm going to give an example about myself, but it's hypothetical. When we talk about paid work, care work, first of all, who is supposed to pay for that work? Yes, it was talked about. I think it needs to be made clear. Mom is doing at home. Of my sibling is ensuring things are good in the house. Time is in the, for example, ensuring that the livestock are okay and all that. And instead of my mom or both my parents deciding to, for example, employ a maid to help my mom, because they know that if they did that, then they would lose some money, the same money that they use to educate me, they end up choosing to do the work by themselves. So how do we then interpret unpaid caregiving kind of work? So I think interpretation of those findings is, should look at the socio-economic realities of this country or the people that you involved in the study. Thank you.
I am called Eric Jemba. I am a PhD student from School of Liberal and Performing Arts. Mine goes to my sister, Peace. In the past, you had a study, a similar study about masculinity where we shared talk show, reality show. And there are men who, for me, to qualify to be here. Finally,
Peace has talked about recognition, but also we want to see representation of nature. Is where connection is. I haven't heard where, when they are going to do property sharing, where they are looking into what this woman has contributed, and actually that is where the problem is.
Yeah.
In most cases, there is no recognition whatsoever for the years of this woman has spent in the marriage, the children she has produced and looked after, the washing of the trousers and shirts and all that, the taking care does not come into the picture when they are talking about property assets within a home. You are the first person to hear it from. We are not fighting nature. There's nothing natural about unpaid care work. It is socially constructed and therefore it can change. Thank you very much. My time is up. We keep engaging to be able to answer some of these questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As we close, we wish we had another hour. Before I close with a comment, I want to recognize the funders of these projects, and it's not only here in Uganda, but also other countries. We are funded under the Growth and Economic Opportunities for Women in East Africa. So all the East African countries are involved in projects that really seek to enhance women's engagement and involvement in many other paid work and economic activities. The initiative is really funded by the Melinda and Belinda Gates and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation with